Welcome to the Montreal Forum with your host, Liam Maguire. This broadcast will be coming to you from left to right on your listening device.
Thank you, Dick. Oh, God, love that. Never will not love that. Liam Maguire here, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Montreal Forum, part of Habs Nation. Pleased to be coming here a little bit outside the 7-day window here with the holidays going on and my son in town and his fiance and everything for another few days anyway before they head back to Rankin Inlet. And as much as our weather's been inclement here, it's much more desirable than what they'll be going back into up north in Nunavut. That's for sure. They came from the week before arriving with the wind chill, minus 61 was the temperature. So it's not good here today, but whole lot better than that. This show, of course, is brought to you by, let me just go, it's Goalie phoning, brought to you by Hosey and Brown Automotive. My dear friends who next year will be celebrating 50 years. They're my main sponsor. Rod Brown, thank you very much for your support. Bringing the Montreal Forum here, part of Habs Cast Nation. Thanks, Grant. And also thanks, Grant, for the late breaking news, as most of you are pretty quick to pick up on social media, that I guess it's been announced that Monsieur Montembeault will be back in the net against Florida. Now, you know, had he been playing regularly, it kind of would make sense given they got him from the Panthers. But boy, oh boy, we're all going to be on pins and needles there till he faces those first few shots, aren't we? I mean, as I just said to Grant off the air, we'll be hoping like heck that what they saw in Laval, despite the first game and what they've seen in practice since he's been back, is enough to, well, Monty said it right out of the gate that as soon as he got recalled, that they're going to get him in some action and he's going to see some ice. And I don't really necessarily blame Fowler for any of the goals. We'll talk about that crazy Tampa game here shortly, but at the end of the day, it's pretty easy to transition from him into somebody else. Myself, I think I would have got Dolby, and I probably would have used his play against Florida to determine, because it's not a back-to-back, who goes against Carolina. It's just a hellacious road trip, and we're already 1-0-2. We got 4 out of 6 points in a really good position here, hanging into third in that absolutely abomination of an Atlantic Division, or Eastern Conference, if you will, but Atlantic Division for sure. Coming in here to finish up here these next few games, just tough. And coming into Saturday, you got that afternoon tilt in St. Louis. I would have played them then. Give them every opportunity to play one of the lowest scoring teams who are giving up goals like crazy and can't score very well, and they're having a horrendous season. And I know sometimes that's a bit of a trap to throw a goalie in there, but I guess Marty and company are saying nope. He's going right into the Wolves against Florida, who are, despite the loss, coming off. I mean, that was, I guess he'll have played another game by then, but that game against Tampa that on Saturday night, if you caught any of that as you were ripping around the hockey games, it was World War III, as it usually is with those. Actually, a lot of the games have been pretty fractious the last couple of weeks here. As normally is around Christmas time, games get a lot rougher in the NHL for whatever reason. I think everybody's reaching the halfway part of the season, and you're not taking any prisoners out there. So at any rate, Monty gets to start in the next game. You got to figure, who knows what to figure. We're back to the three-headed monster. I don't think anybody figured we'd get there again. It's definitely not sustainable over the course of the season, as Montreal will continue to hopefully fight for a playoff spot here and scratch and claw for points. We'll transition on that note to scratching and clawing for a point. I always text my son, regardless of where he is. He happens to be in Ottawa right now. And he was out at a social function last night. He said, Dad, if you can keep me updated. And I'm going, when it's 3-0 and Montreal not getting anything out of the first period, getting anything out of those power plays, it just drives me crazy. And it's not systemic breakdowns because they're sitting at their power play. When they do what they did last night and not get anything out of it, you drop from 4th down to 7th, even though the percentage points in some cases are just a decimal point or two. You go you go 1 for 4 and you can move up or certainly stay the same. That's 25%. If you have any night where you go 2 for 4, you're going to jump a spot or two. Conversely, if you go 0 for 4, you'll drop a spot or two, and that's what they did. And in that first period, when you knew Tampa had nothing, they looked like they had nothing. And by the way, I want to give John Cooper, don't you just love the guy? I mean, his comments out of his mouth post game, the best team over 65 minutes didn't get 2 points. Like, there's just not a lot of other coaches that would say that. It's just so refreshing. And I look forward to him behind the bench here in the Olympics in just a month or so's time. But I just thought it was such a refreshing comment from John Cooper to say that, despite the fact they got that extra point on us. Really, let's be honest. The game was about the comeback, which is all about Slafkovsky. And it seems like almost, if not immediately, to going on that line with Cappy and Demi there, that it's been instant impact. And conversely, Nick and Cole are sliding. That line's going up. Can't all blame it on, seriously, it can't all just be because of Slav, can it? I mean, there's no way it can't just singularly be him. I know Bolduc had the 2 goals there, got off the snide on home ice. And, you know, Slav's just playing with so much confidence. He's coming through the neutral zone, carrying the puck and gaining the offensive zone. We got controlled zone entries with him. That goal he scored last night, after setting up Demi in the backhand reverse, then he scores. It's just a beauty, let alone what he did to tie it. Okay, that's just ridiculous. We'll get there in a second, but I know NHL just voted him 3rd star of the week, so he's got that going for him. Everything he's done here in the last 14, 15 games, his points, what he's doing, he's averaging over a point a game, everything. It's just unbelievable what he's doing right now. You know, Montreal Canadiens fans are saying, why can't we have nice things, man? Why can't Cole and Nick keep it going? Could you imagine if both those lines are cooking right now? And that's what you need, right? That's what you need to be up in the upper echelon of the NHL. And they got to get it going. Like, you know, Cole scored a nice one against Boston, right? Nice little dipsy dandle doodle there, whatever you call it. And stuck one in on Swayman there between the pipes. And Nick keeps picking up a point here or there. You know, I like to do every show, see where the boys are at. And Nick's dropped a point from the last 2 weeks. He's been on pace for 92. He's on pace for 91. Cole's goals, outside of that Boston one, he's been in a bit of a drought, as we all know, stuck on 18, if you want to call it, stuck on 18. But he kind of is, right? He hasn't been scoring. So his pace now is down to 39, which would still be a career high. But we were all hoping, and we do hope he can get back into projected 40-plus range. Lane, now on pace, and you have to stop for a second and think about the real world, right? You know he was watching that game where his brother took that shot. There's no question. And I love the fact that I forget which American it was after that said he texted Lane right away. And said, I'll give you the updates as soon as we know. And I think Cole Hudson, now I'm referring to, was declared relatively soon after arriving at the hospital to be not in any imminent danger, you know, certainly in for observation, but a lot of the immediate red flags were dispelled pretty quickly. And that it had to be on Lane's mind. It'd be impossible not to. And yet he's just been so dynamic. They're even commenting on the game last night, the length of his shifts, but he's out there. He's not dogging it. He's busting it. He's leading the rushes. His compete level, this whole thing with him and Demidov going to the outdoor rink. I know we've seen that before. It's not like they're the first guys to do it, but to go and do that in Montreal, of all cities, right? I mean, there's probably an outdoor rink about every 8 blocks, but is just such an amazing thing to do. I'm just, by the way, just clicking on the notes here now. So sorry if I missed any that are in here now. I want to catch up on some of these right now. So future show, Guy Lapointe was known as the ultimate prankster. Did Guy Lapointe? I'm sorry, Grant. I just got to digress. I don't want to miss any of these. So yeah, I see Grant's chiming in with some of the stuff. Guy Lapointe never actually pranked me, and I was around that guy quite a few times. I thought one time, I'll just share a very quick story. I was at the draft in Florida. I believe it was 2001. Was that the Spezza draft? I think it was 2001 when Spezza got drafted. And because he was right, there was so much hype around him coming out of junior. And I had a media pass to be there for press row, but I was trying to get a player's pass and go and drink with those guys. Lapointe was scouting at the time, and I'm walking in the big reception area, and where all the media had assembled, and there's some food for them and all the usual suspects. By 2001, my God, it's already 24 years ago, 24 and change, because that was the summer of 01. I'm pretty sure it was 01. Yeah, that's when I interviewed Marcel Pronovost about the Montreal Canadiens, the fallacy about them getting the top 2 picks in French Canadian guys in the province. Marcel gave me his story. I digress. Most of you have probably read what I wrote about that. I took several years to put that together. That was the year when I interviewed Marcel Pronovost, and I also interviewed Nick Fatiu about his fight with Jack Carlson in the brawl in the hall in the WHA. Again, another digression. I'm walking in the big cafeteria area where the media had assembled. All of a sudden, right in front of me, this door goes flying open, and it's Guy Lapointe. And he grabs me, and he says, "Get in here." And because he knows I didn't have the players where the hockey ops people, I didn't have that pass. I had a media pass. I go, holy shit, what's going on? Now, everyone knows about Lapointe. I heard a million stories we all had. I figured something's going to fall on my head or something's going to happen. Who knows what he had set up? Yeah, nothing. He saw me walking in there. He figured I only had a press pass. He wanted me to come and drink with the boys, and that's all he did. So no, Rick, to answer your question, my dear friend, he never actually pranked me, but his stories, and Grant just talked about some of them were legendary. That's pretty cool stuff. Yeah, 2001. Yeah, thank you guys. That's when it was. I was down there as part of Photonic Sports was the name of the company. Online stuff. Imagine we're doing this show online, and that was the first year I worked for an online company. We had an office on Parliament Hill on Wellington Street. On Wellington Street, right across from Parliament Hill, and that's where I was on 9/11. When those planes hit, I was right across from Parliament Hill. So you want to believe I boogied the hell out of there and got home and tried to figure out what the heck was going on in the world. But again, digression. That's my forte. Yeah, that's good stuff about Lapointe. If anybody else is watching with questions, I'll try and keep up with them for sure. Back to last night and a couple other things, or the that Tampa game, Slavkovsky, unbelievable. I don't know, Cole. What I feel when he starts sliding, he's missing the net. I know he did in OT. I don't know how we didn't win that thing in OT. I mean, it was unbelievable. And where did it all start? It all started with the faceoff. Danault is already worth that second round pick. Just in the few games he's played with Montreal. Can you believe it? He's 72% on the dot last night. That's ridiculous. I mean, his career has always been over 50. He's hovered between 53 and 55. His time on ice is, I noticed LA bumped him up right away, right? Those first few years, they had him up a couple minutes a game. He was coming off decent seasons in a sense. He's always been a half point a game guy. I know he hasn't put up the numbers this year, and he hasn't yet with Montreal, but his value has been immeasurable, not the least of which was in that draw that led to the tying goal and the one that got us possession in OT. And I know it was a couple faceoffs and we still maintained, but his weight in gold, he'll be 33 early in the new year here. He's getting up there. He's not ancient. He may not score at all like he did in that previous run with Montreal when we got him from Chicago. But my God, has he been absolutely fantastic for us. And last night is no exception. We got a point out of nothing. Let's see how at the end of the year, how this all plays out. And there'll be so many big games with points on the line that we'll either get or not get. But can you imagine coming down back 3-0 and 4-1 and scoring like that in the third period to tie that thing up. We had no business in it really because Tampa got their legs. We just didn't have it going. The breaks that they got were hitting linesmen. Sticks are breaking. What in God's name is going on with the sticks? I just cannot believe it. I cannot believe it. I know we've been seeing it mostly from Matheson this year, but now lately Demidov. I saw all the comments on social media. I couldn't agree more. As a guy who played my whole life, I know back in the day, we didn't have these composites that are feathers. If anybody's still playing out there and you have a stick comparative to today's genre, and I'm not playing anymore. I haven't in a couple of years now. And the stick I have is just when is probably about 4 years old. But the ones that some of my buddies have, you literally could balance it on your index finger. They're nothing to them. And they're being shattered, and they cost hundreds of dollars if you were to buy them in a resale store. And I just cannot believe that they can't construct these things to survive the torque. I know this is the thing. I remember Matt Sundin, the first time he used a composite, and just said, it's insane. The speed of the puck for me, and Matt's could fire a puck. It's just improved by 10 miles an hour. He said, probably an exaggeration. Call it 5. Even that, for a guy of his stature and ability, was phenomenal. And now everybody can fire the puck. But to what end? I mean, Demi's in that, and he had that thing wound up to the ceiling. And who knows? The guy can fire a puck. He can pick a spot. It breaks. He goes back. I think he made the change. Late guy comes off, up to Kucherov. Goal, and they're off to the races. And then the shoot in, and we just didn't have anything going for us. Come back in the third and put them on their heels and take that over and then to do it with 3.8 seconds. It's just not something we've seen much of in Montreal in the last few years. That's why I think all of us as fans, notwithstanding a few guys on Twitter, I don't know if they're masquerading as Habs fans or not, but oh my God, the negativity that comes out of them if there's a bad period by anybody is pretty scalding hot negativity. I'll tell you, it just makes you shake your head. But at the end of the day, it's just guys just reacting the way they can now with the phones, and it just allows us all to comment on every single shift, and not really fair in the big picture. And certainly last night was a perfect example of it. But yeah, let's see here. Some comments coming in. Who supplies the Canadian sticks? I actually don't know. Sheldon, if you got anything you can send down to, I think a lot of us are saying that right now, that we would like to get, hey, try this stick. It'd be like handing one of my old drivers. I'm an avid golfer, handing one of my old drivers to a PGA guy. I bet you they could probably still bust at 320. These guys could probably still fire a puck with just about anything, and maybe not have the absolute ridiculousness of the consistency of these breaks that are happening. And of course, it's never at an opportune time because you're in the process of taking a shot, usually in the offensive zone, and it's going to be coming back at you the other way. So it's a killer last night, and yet we survived it enough to get a point, and we should have won that thing in OT. And good on John Cooper to mention it. At the end of the day, we'll take that point and run into Florida now with Monty starting, and just hope he has a good outing. I mean, who among us right now would not like to say, hey, let's see the Canadians. Let's hope they have a problem, because everybody's going to go in and play well here for the next little while, and they have to figure out what to do. But it's a tough one, right? I mean, I don't know. If Monty can come back and show anything, and when I say show anything, I mean, just give me a goals against average somewhere. It doesn't even have to be 2.2. Give me 2.5, 2.6, even 2.7. Give me a save percentage around 9. I'll even take high 8-900, 8-9s. Give me something that the team can use. Their scoring. We're what? Tied for 5th, 125 goals, 4th or 5th in goals for. We're scoring. Despite the power play's ineffectiveness last night, we're still at 25%. We're scoring. We've got guys who can put the puck in the net. We haven't been able to defend as well as we'd like, and a large part of that's in the net. So let's see what happens here. Sorry, Glenn. Yeah, talking about the sticks, a lower flex for the better whip. I mean, there's no question. Somebody internally has to be saying something, and I know this isn't just Montreal phenomenon. This is across the league, and although I watch a lot of games and I don't see it happen as often, you guys. I mean, we all must watch a ton of hockey, right? I'm watching games. I'm not seeing them broken with the same. Maybe it's because I'm hardcore Habs, so focused on my team. But I swear to God, I'm not. I'm not seeing it happen as often as I am with Montreal. And now it's Demi. It was Mavis in the first 20 games, and now it's Demidov. And man, oh man, he can fire the friggin' puck. So I don't know what the hell's going on, but figure it out. This is, I mean, imagine worst case scenario, a game where you need a goal, you need a point, you need that point, you need that extra point, or it's a playoffs or whatever, and it's happening. That's just, and it certainly never saw it back in the day. And guys could still fire a puck pretty good. I know. I'm not gonna say just because Lafleur and Cournoyer could play with those sticks back then. And believe me, they were using way better lumber than the Rocket did, and the Rocket was using a way better piece of wood than Howie Morenz was. But the guys seem to always be able to find a way to score. And now these things are breaking like balsa wood, and it's just not satisfactory. It's not acceptable. And they've got to be visiting that internally with the stick companies or something and trying to figure something out. And to your point, Glenn, I mean, it's a question of maybe, as you say, taking less whip for a higher resistant flex. Absolutely. I mean, minimally, if nothing else, investigate something like that. And I'll admit, I don't know the stick industry. And I know back in the day, I used to get all my sticks from actually a bicycle store that had hockey department called Foster and Biles on Bank Street in Ottawa. And they used to get in the Lafleur pattern when he was using the Cohos. You remember the Coho 221. Now, Lafleur shot right, I shot left. But those days, for marketing purposes, you could get it whichever hand you shot. And I tell the guy, look, I'm going to need probably 3 or 4 for the year and at the start of the season. And he put them aside for me. And I used those for so many years. And those sticks were so good. And they rarely broke. And now it's just an epidemic. And something's got to be done. So, yeah. There's no central provided sticks to any given team. Players decide. That's right. I think a lot of them have individual deals. Do they not? I know they're not paying for their sticks, obviously, but not quite sure how that all works. Does the bill just go to the Montreal Canadiens and the guys pick their sticks? I think maybe it's as simple as that. But yeah, it does seem to be worse this year. Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah, Arbor. Definitely want to get on to Arbor. Catching up some messages here. My main man, he's a lightning rod. There's no doubt about it. Both for Hab fans and for the league. You heard last night that was his 7th fighting major, so he's taken over the league lead. I was going to do the breakdown on the fights, but I'm not going to go to that degree. I don't feel I have to. Look, I think I mentioned on a previous show that I actually met Sabare. He's an Ottawa guy, East End guy, and I golfed with him one day, probably about 4 or 5 years ago now. Wait a minute. COVID might have been actually 6 years ago. Might have been the summer before COVID. I think it probably was. Anyway, as you can imagine, meeting 99.9% of these guys off the ice. Super nice guy. He was in great shape then too. And I'm happy to see him get some NHL experience. But he hits to hurt. And I think a lot, not a lot. It's unfair to say. But some of how he comports himself on the ice as a player, I think crosses the line. And look, I'm not going to lie. I know they had a war there against Florida, but the way he plays, you're always worrying about if someone's going to eventually catch lane. Man, he's taking some big hits. He took another one. Did you see it last night up against the boards on this side of the screen? Took a big hit, pinching the puck in. He just bounces right back up like an Indian rubber ball. But my God, it scares me sometimes. But when Savvy's out there, I was worried. Not saying that's good to what happened, but when Arbor ran him over, we didn't really see that initially. It was on the replay. At least I didn't. Caught that on the replay. And then Sabi chased him down. And, Arbor's over the past couple seasons has said no at the right times to a fight, depending on the score of the game and wanting to not give momentum and stuff like that. I mean, Sabran was right in his face. And I think at the end of the day, if you're going to be an enforcer, eventually you have to go. And he went. I still don't like the style Arbor has evolved into a few short seasons with the Montreal Canadiens. I know I've been messaging with Chris Nyland about that. Not that Chris has gone in and pulled a George Larac and tried to do any type of coaching or teaching, but I know Chris and Arbor have gotten pretty close. And I'm not saying necessarily Chris would be the guy to be able to do anything to get Arbor to the next level. So as I wrote to an anonymous guy on Twitter this morning, I mentioned it last night. He replied this morning. You don't need a guy to scare somebody as an enforcer. You need to have somebody that's willing immediately. What we've missed in Montreal in the buffer period before we got Arbor, before we got the sheriff, was somebody instantaneously to go in when a notable wrong has been committed. Now, I'll give you an example that happened last night as well. We all saw it with Columbus and the Islanders, with Marchment running Schaefer repeatedly, and the second time, very loose half knee, with Schaefer going down again for the second time, being hit by him. And of all guys, Barzal comes over with the tap. I think most of you have probably seen. I think he got a $5,000 fine, which he drops on the way to the parking lot. So that'll be nothing. And meanwhile, he stuck up. The scrum happened. They lost the game, but I think there was a lot of winning in the room. And that incident and that move by Barzal, the way the team went after that, I think you'll see and Islanders have had a good season. Let's be honest. They really have. They're playing very well. And excuse me. Excuse me. Sorry about that. I'm allergic to not drinking. I'll rectify that shortly. I just think that when you talk about team toughness, and the Montreal Canadiens with Arbor, they have that. They have it with Struble to an extent as well. They have it with Josh Anderson with an extent as well. I love what he did in the last few games. He went most of the season without a scrap. He actually got into it with Sabi, right? Sabi didn't give him a chance. I talked about it in that loss to Tampa, and he ran him in the corner, gave him no chance. And when I saw it was Arbor and Sabi were going to go, I went, God, what's Arbor going to do? Because Sabi's a lefty, and you know what's going in. So when they started trading, I go, shit, man, he's going power for power, and he's got his head down. And this is what he did in the first year that he fought, most of the fights, win, lose, or draw, he was up. And I don't like his style right now. I don't think it's necessarily conducive to him using his best leverage for power. Having said that, he landed a hell of a shot last night, and we all know what happened. And I hope Sabi's okay. Not because I met the guy briefly a number of years ago, but I would hope that for anybody. But I give our obviously clear W for Arbor last night in the scrap, and he didn't get a lot of ice time. I think he only had 9 shifts or whatever it was. Obviously had to serve the major, and I know I saw him fan on one play, one clearing attempt, and there's a small margin with him and Marty. And when the comeback started, it was pretty apparent he was going to see not much ice. I think that was pretty apparent, and probably part of the reason why his ice time was a little bit under what's been his season average so far. As I wrote, if the Canadiens have all their defensemen healthy, I think Arbor and Struble are platooning. It's as simple as that. And you're going to handpick the games where you think you're going to need them. And it's just you're probably almost always going to be down a D. So now Enstrom's come in, and he can be another piece of the puzzle. And we don't know about Reinbacher down the road here and others. God, let alone what's going on with that kid out west who scores every night. But I mean, there's some good things coming down the road. At the end of the day, you can't have all those guys on the roster and win in the playoffs. If you don't have some toughness out there, we can all be, not me, but some of you can be a little guilty sometimes of not understanding. You just forget that how much you still need some overall team toughness. And the Sheriff provides that. And that was probably his most dominant win. Next to his very first fight. His very first fight against Cassian of the Edmonton Oilers. It's probably his next most dominant win. And he's had a few others in between. He's also fought all the heavies. He's fought Delorier a couple times, Olivier a couple times. He's fought Janot 3 times. I think he's probably 0 for 3 against Janot. Well, no, the first one was a draw for sure. But in the last one, he was out for over a minute. And I think even Janot alluded to that. Regardless, he's my man. I support him. I'm glad he's on the team. I hope he's on the roster right through, going for the foreseeable future. And I like everything he does. Let me just scroll down here. Dobson broke some sticks this year, I guess, eh? Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, you guys are arguing about Danault. I'll let you guys talk about that online. I'm a big fan. I've got no problem with what I've seen so far. I think he earned his trade to Montreal. Everything last night is eroded anything else that I've seen. I really have very little to say negative about him at this point. I'm going to give him a good window of games here before I'm going to say that it's either the trade. Well, you had to give to get. They had an extra second round pick anyway, so I had no problem with that at all. Yeah, right hand by Arbor, man. It was right over the top, over and done. That was from Mark. Yeah. Let's see. Victoriaville Glen. I remember the Victoriaville sticks. I never used one. Never used a Vic. I was very young out of the gate in the 60s. It was a CCM Bobby All hat trick. Then I went to the Hesplers. And before I ended up on Coho for quite a while. Let's see here. You guys are discussing stuff here. Yeah, Kirby, who made that comment? Sheldon, yeah. Yes, Kirby, recall, I think his first fight as a member of the Habs, I believe it was against the Ottawa Senators, if I'm not mistaken. And he's a big boy, Western Canadian guy. I'd like to see more of that in him if we could get him in the lineup healthy. I mean, geez, him and Goalie, they just got to come back and give us a run of games here and see what we really got. I mean, the impact of Goalie is just second to none. And you get Kirby looked like maybe for the second time on Montreal, he's starting to maybe turn the corner a little bit. And then another massive injury, let alone a new hook. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, Barzell. Yeah. Yeah. Not a fan having defenseman as an enforcer. That's the way it goes. You know, the one good thing is you got 6D. So if at the end of the day, the result is you get more ice for our big three, you know, just to steal a term from the 70s boys, our big three right now. By the way, you know, I was checking it out, talking about points per game, and because Lane is he's on pace for 78 right now, so he's just playing great. Dobson's been on fire here lately. He's on pace for 55. And if Matheson can just pick up the offense a little, right now he's on pace for 41. If he could somehow get up to that 50-point mark, there hasn't been 3 defensemen with 50-point season in the NHL since the Bruins in 1994. So with Bork, Wesley, and Iafrate. So pretty rarefied air. Although, of course, as I said, Matheson's a number of points back from that. But hey, listen, Arbor scraps. He's off for 5, and the other guys pick up the slack. I got zero problem with that. Somebody, you know, you say ideally maybe it's your fourth liner, and you still got to give somebody extra ice. I don't have a problem. The guy going off for 5 minutes and a defenseman and some of your more ice time defensemen are going to pick up more ice. No problem with that at all. Let's see. Yeah, you guys are talking there internally about Doc. We're all wondering at some point, right? It reaches the zenith here of you cut bait and you move on. That's definitely not going to happen. I mean, look, he's going to come back here at some point this season, and we'll see what happens. But if he can't go on a decent stretch from now to when he comes back, from now to the end of the season and into next year, then I think there'll be some serious question marks of just the poor bad luck combined with just the fragility. And I think Goalie unfortunately, will start getting some of the same questions. Tyson Marvis Fraser, it was kind of similar to that. I felt bad, right? Because that was Joe's son. And I think even Tyson wanted the ref to jump in there on that one. That was pure destruction. I mean, Tyson from 20 to 25 was just ridiculous. Lots of messages here, so you guys mostly talking to each other, but yeah, big decisions ahead for Kent Hughes, which I'm sure, as much as he's probably wondering, will some of them be made for me? At the end of the day, what him and Jeff Gorton have done, how can anybody say? Right now, the Habs are on pace for 99 points. It would be an 8-point improvement. Whether that comes down a little bit or not, whatever it takes. I mean, right now, if the playoffs start today, they're in. So, we'll just see. They've got these next couple of games coming up. With, again, road trips are tough, and they're 1-0-2 in the start of it here. So you gotta love it. They're 4 to 6 points, and a game like last night. Just think about it yourselves, guys. I don't care what level you played. You're in a sporting event like last night, and you come back to accomplish something in terms of getting a point out of nothing in that third period comeback. That is just massively inspirational. So if we can just get Nick and Cole going, and where it concerns me a little bit is you're going into Armstrong with the GM in St. Louis on Saturday, and I think the decisions are going to be made here before then, probably about Nick. But I mean, you had Cooper last night. I don't think Nick had his best showing, and he's probably got some input here on the Olympic team. And whereas I really had Nick penciled in to one of my top 14 forwards, I think that's getting precarious right now. I do believe Connor Bedard, unless they come out or they know something that he is absolute going to be a no-go, possibly for surgery, or possibly the injury, just as it is right now, is going to be enough to not sustain him to go beyond, then, and they definitely don't pick him. Otherwise, I believe he's going to be selected as one of our 14. And there's only so many centermen, and I just don't think Nick's a candidate necessarily to go to the wing, as some of the others might be. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But yeah, I think again, Trevor Deneau, that's a guy I know from here. I think Deneau is, and he earned it for me last night. That was just unbelievable. I think he's only going to improve going forward. Arbor on a fourth line wing. I know that's been discussed previously online before. I don't know how that would work is in terms of his maneuverability. Although, to be honest, for a big man, when he's having one of his better games, which is more often than not by his standards, I think his maneuverability is pretty decent. There's been lots of history of defensemen being moved up front. Certainly way more examples of vice versa, of forwards coming back. But there's been lots of D guys from the back, probably none more famous than guys like Wendell Clark and Gary Lehman coming out of the Western League. Clark first overall in Toronto, never even played him one shift on D. I think maybe a couple shifts in training camp, but he was very quickly put up on the wing where he stayed. And we all know his career. And there's been other examples of it for sure. Listen, my own personal opinion, I love Arbor where he is. I would want him in the lineup every night, but I understand when we have everybody healthy, he's going to be probably platooned. I don't think there's any doubt about it. If anything, his game has regressed a notch, but when he is playing to the best of his ability, I think he's an asset to be in the top 6 of this current edition of the Montreal Canadiens. I also believe, and I don't think this is up for debate, he's by far our number one enforcer when need be. And I just think his willingness to go when it's necessary is critical in times when it's necessary. And I've got no problem with him doing that on defense. So, yeah, when Goalie comes back, look out. Yeah, Evans now out. I believe that's retroactive, right? So it's not going to be 4 to 6 essentially from today. But it is going to be interesting to see, which goes back to the person's comments about what Kent Hughes is going to do with lineup arrangements and things of that nature. So, yeah, we're Grant joking about Goalie. It's disheartening when he consistently gets hurt, because when the guy gets on a roll and you see the benefit of what he can bring to the table, it just makes so much sense where Montreal, why they acquired him, where they did, what they want, hope, and expect out of him, and we're not getting it because of these consistent injuries. And it's very frustrating. See the Isles picking up a protector. Yeah, look at their coaches. I mean, any of the post-game comments, and they lost, was no problem. Now, look, he's going to support the player anyway. Probably knew Barzal was going to get something. I think most probably felt he was going to get a game. But I think it was just a fine, if I'm not mistaken. So I think Patrick Roy is going to lobby very hard for some sort of acquisition here, because the Isles have had a tremendous season. They're in the playoffs. They're going to be in the race pretty much regardless as this thing plays out. And if guys are going to go after Schaefer, you don't want Barzal doing that. Now, in the case of on the ice, you can't always have the right configuration on the ice. So I think you have to have some sort of deterrent. Look, it's never going to be the 70s and the 80s again. Never. Too bad. But, I mean, there's still room to have somebody in your lineup and on your roster that can take care of business when need be. And I know there's teams that have won the cup recently that haven't necessarily had that person that could play that role. But if you look at, say, Tampa and their team toughness, if you look at Vegas and their team toughness when they won, if you look at Florida, I mean, that's beyond reproach. And it's not that they have a guy out there like Arbor. Okay, I get that. But you play the cards you're dealt. He's a guy that came in as a free agent. I think he's been an absolute diamond in the rough. And when I say that, I'm not talking about a guy who's going out to work your power play or anything like that. Oh, he has an absolute cannon for a shot. But at the end of the day, he fits the bill right now for where the Canadians are elevating and hoping to get to. So let's see here. I think I may have skipped by a couple here. I know a lot of you guys are just having internal discussions there, but yeah, is that Schaefer? Grant on pace for 50 points. He's gone quiet, right? He has really gone quiet offensively here in the last little bit. But what an absolute gem he's been. I mean, he's not only eligible for the World Junior this year, he's eligible next year. You'll never see it, of course. And we lost him last year, 2 games in. I mean, it's just the unfairness of it all for Canada is to not have so many guys year after year after year. You know, when we won silver medals in 1986 and 1999, I know none of you know this, but a little bit of insight for you. When we won silver medals, and those were 86 was a long time ago, probably before some of you were born, but we had 10 guys in the NHL, 10 available players, both those years in the NHL. It's pretty easy to see the names. I can read them all for you or recite them all for you. But if you go back, look at the draft, look at the rosters for the World Junior rosters, you can do it yourself. It'd take 2 minutes. And you'll see the guys who we were missing, who weren't there as 19-year-olds. Because they're in the NHL. So, anyway, let's wind this puppy up here. I've gone a lot longer than I normally do now. What else did I want to say here? I don't think too much. That was just unbelievable by Slav last night. And if we're on the verge of seeing this guy achieve or head to, I was checking last night because I saw somebody on Twitter mention, thank you, Grant. I'll mention Guy Chouinard as well. But they were talking about Leon Draisaitl. And I was looking when he finally had his breakout season. And it took, I think, until his fourth season, I believe. I think he was drafted third or fourth overall, if I'm not mistaken. I think in 2014. Grant, you're a better draft guy, I think, than I am, but I believe he went third or fourth in 2014. It just takes some of these guys a couple of years, but with the phones today and social media today and the haters today, and then the willingness of Montreal fans to eat their own today, man, I say this all the time. I shudder to think what social media would have done to Guy Lafleur in the early 1970s. I mean, they would have, believe me, he would have jumped to the Quebec Nordiques so fast when that offer came in 74 to get out of all of this after his goal totals went from 29 to 28 to 21. It would have been just horrendous. But I know that was then and this is now. But Slav, just keep it going, kid. What a godsend. And if we can get Cole and Nick back on track, you don't see Nick struggle too long, usually. Everybody has their droughts, other than Gretzky and Lemieux. Everybody else has their droughts. You have time stretches of games where you're not playing well. But you got to figure those two are going to turn it around. And maybe Slav really was a huge catalyst on the line. I don't think it was necessarily just his doing. I do think the guys' play have fallen off a little bit. And it was interesting, wasn't it, that Marty didn't use Nick in either of the first two shooters. I don't know who you were going to see had we got to the third, but it really was time to pull him at least out of that rotation. And hopefully he can get it going again. They are both integral parts of any success the Montreal Canadiens are going to have. So, when he took off his helmet and he signed a contract with Montreal for 6 years and he got married, those are all the things that happened in 1974. It wasn't just a helmet. It was a couple of other things, plus the fact he rebuffed the Nordiques, where his soon-to-be wife's father was a minority owner. So you can imagine the pressure that was on Guy to jump to the Nordiques, and he didn't do it. But had social media been around at the time, they would have absolutely just ran him right out of town on the rails. There's no doubt in my mind about it at all. Having said that, we all know that Guy went on to do pretty good things. Speaking of Guys, Guy Chouinard, the news broke the other day. Excuse me, I should say yesterday, I guess it was, that Guy Chouinard had passed away. I only met the man once, and it was in the early 2000s when he was coaching in the Q. So he had long since left the NHL, but he coached in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, now called the Quebec Maritime Hockey League, for a number of years. And I was in Hull. I knew a lot of the NHL scouts. As I said, I was at many of those drafts in those in the early 2000s. And they introduced me to Guy Chouinard, and we talked about the Atlanta Flames because Brad Marsh was, who I'd gotten to know at that point quite well, was drafted by the Flames. Of course, they had stayed good friends, and Guy Chouinard was such an integral part of the Flames, just morphing into a pretty decent club. Notwithstanding, they had a playoff berth under Boom Boom Geoffrion was a head coach pretty early on in their existence. Then they kind of leveled off a little bit. They made the big Tom Lysiak trade, bodies going back and forth in that huge trade with Chicago, and they assembled out of all of that one of the toughest teams in the NHL. I mean, they were right there with the Bruins and the Flyers in that late 70s, and they had a bunch of new Westminster kids, and on the offense was the Gem line, and the Gem be GEM, Guy Chouinard, Eric Vale, and Bobby McMillan. So two first initials and a last initial. And when Guy Chouinard got his 50th goal of the season that year, he scored it against the New York Rangers, and Vale and McMillan assisted it. He also scored the last goal ever in Atlanta Flame history. So speaking of the Flames, when they lost to the Rangers in the playoffs that year, Guy Chouinard got their last ever goal, and then he turns right around as a member of the Calgary Flames in a 5-all tie against the Nordiques. And speaking of the Nordiques, and he scored the Flames' first ever goal when they went to Calgary. So he's got history, and he's obviously, you score 50 goals in the NHL, you record 100 points in the NHL. I don't care, you do it once, you do it 15 times like Gretzky. You were a hell of a player, and he was a hell of a player. And although my meeting with him was fairly brief, 15 minutes post game at the Bob Gertain Arena 25 years ago, he was very, very pleasant to talk to, and it was an enjoyable conversation. And condolences to his family and anybody else who may be on here who had a chance to meet him or remember his career. He was a pretty solid player, and it would have been interesting had that Atlanta team stayed together. We know the nucleus of it went to Calgary, and when they picked up Lanny from Colorado, a lot of good things started to happen, as we know. And a few years later, they were in a Stanley Cup final, and a few years after that, winning a Stanley Cup. So the franchise did go on to have some success, and a lot of it offensively started on the backs of guys like Guy Chouinard. So may he rest in peace. The quick comments here. Falling ice for sure. Yeah, he's a hockey legend in the queue. Willie Plett. Yeah, Willie Plett was a Calder Trophy winner as well in '77 with the Flames. Speaking of tough guys, tough as nails. All right. Well, finish on this day in hockey, and then a special toast. This day in Montreal Canadian hockey. They got their 3,000th career win in the history of the Montreal Canadiens on December 29, 2008. They beat the Florida Panthers 5-2. And a couple interesting notes in that game. Max Lapierre got a hat trick. It was the only hat trick of his NHL career. And he got it on the night the Habs got their 3,000th career win. He got the game winner, obviously, as well. And the third was into an empty netter. So got to give a shout out to Max, and a shout out to the Habs for that. And anytime you can finish on a note about Rocket Richard, he got his 100th career goal on this date in 1945. This was the season after he had 50 and 50. He had a bit of a drop off in 45-46, and then he bounced right back in 46-47 with another real damn good season of 45 goals. But on this date, he got his 100th career goal. It came in a loss to Chicago. Goaltender Mike Caracas, who's a very famous goalie from that era, himself a Calder winner, Calder Award winner. That was before officially it became known as a Calder Trophy in 1937, and then it became known as a Calder Memorial Trophy when Frank Calder passed away in 1943. Won't bore you with all those details, but the Rocket, he scored 2 that night, and his second one was his 100th. It was in game number 145. I mean, he was obviously on route to becoming an outstanding scorer. So I have gone on way longer than I normally do. For anybody that hung in there, thank you for your patience. And I will finish on this note with a little shot of Irish whiskey, because today would have been my late father's 96th birthday. So for anybody celebrating today, like my good friend Dave Eastwood, who's Mike Eastwood's brother. Mike played in the NHL. My good buddy Boo. Keith Durant here from the area, a good friend as well, celebrating a birthday today. It would have been my dad's 96th birthday. Born and raised in Dublin, Ireland. Came to Canada as a young man, made it his home, and helped raise 3 boys, largely on the first line south of Ottawa, the Cars Road. So to you, Dad, in your memory on what would have been your 96th birthday, I will sign off on the Montreal Forum, part of Habs Cast Nation. Thanks to Hosey and Brown Automotive. My name's Liam Maguire. I'll be back at you next week. Go Habs, go. Let's finish this road trip in style. G'day.